It was 2:12 a.m. when a panicked husband picked up the phone and dialed 911. His wife wasn't breathing. He thought he was calling for help. Instead, he was calling in the people who would put him on trial for murder. The recording starts with his voice shaking, struggling to explain what happened. "She's not breathing. I don't know what happened. Please, just hurry." The operator's questions come steady and calm. His answers tumble out, fragmented, desperate. The operator guides him through CPR. He tries. His voice breaks between compressions. "Is she responding?" "I don't know. I don't think so. Please just send someone." The call lasts 9 minutes and 43 seconds. To the jury who would hear it later, those 9 minutes would become the most important evidence in the case. 9 minutes after that call, paramedics arrived at his front door. 9 months after that call, he stood in a courtroom while a jury decided whether he was a killer. The phone call that should have saved her life became the key evidence that stole his. This is true stories that change lives. We follow every step of the system that turned a husband into a monster. Tonight, we'll walk through every moment of that night, every decision investigators made, and the evidence the jury never heard, to answer one question. How did a desperate cry for help become a life sentence? His name was Robert, 37 years old, worked as a freight dispatcher for a regional trucking company. Long hours, steady paycheck, nothing glamorous. The job meant coordinating shipments, managing schedules, troubleshooting when drivers got stuck in traffic or weather. He'd been there for 9 years, reliable, the kind of employee who showed up early and stayed late when needed. Her name was Angela, 34, administrative assistant at a dental office, known by coworkers as the one who always remembered birthdays. She kept a drawer full of cards and would slip them onto people's desks with handwritten notes inside. She was the person who organized the office holiday party, who brought in donuts on Fridays, who stayed late to help file insurance paperwork when the office got backed up. They'd been married for 11 years, high school sweethearts who reconnected at a mutual friend's wedding when they were both 23. Robert had been standing by the punch bowl. Angela had walked over and said, "I remember you. You sat behind me in chemistry." They started talking, ended up talking all night, started dating 2 weeks later. No children. They'd talked about it but never quite felt ready. Angela wanted to wait until they had a bigger place. Robert wanted to pay off his truck first. There was always something else that needed to happen first. They lived in a small rental house on the edge of a mid-sized town in the Midwest. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a backyard with a chain-link fence. The kind of place where people know the regular faces at the grocery store, but don't necessarily know each other's names. The neighbors on one side were an elderly couple who kept to themselves. The neighbors on the other side were a young family with 2 kids who played in the yard most afternoons. Robert and Angela weren't social butterflies. They went to work, came home, spent evenings together. Quiet life, comfortable life. Angela had a heart condition, mitral valve prolapse. She'd known about it since her 20s. It was discovered during a routine physical when she was 26. The doctor had heard a slight murmur during the exam and ordered an echocardiogram. The test showed that one of the valves in her heart didn't close properly. Blood would leak backwards slightly with each beat. Most people with mitral valve prolapse live completely normal lives. For some, the condition is so mild they never even know they have it. For Angela, it caused occasional symptoms, palpitations, fluttering sensations in her chest that made her anxious, but usually passed on their own. Sometimes she'd feel lightheaded. Sometimes her heart would race for no reason. Her cardiologist had told her it was manageable, not life-threatening if monitored properly. She took a beta blocker, a medication that slowed her heart rate and controlled the symptoms. 1 pill in the morning, simple routine. Robert knew all of this. He'd gone to appointments with her. He knew the signs of when she was having a bad day. He'd learned to recognize when she needed to sit down, take a breath, let the moment pass. She'd had the condition for 8 years. It had become part of their normal. March 22nd started like most weeknights. Robert got home from work around 6:30 p.m. He'd had a frustrating day. A driver had called in sick last minute, and Robert had spent 2 hours rearranging routes. He was tired but not in a bad mood. Angela had already made dinner, chicken stir-fry with vegetables and rice. Nothing fancy, but it was one of Robert's favorites. She'd learned the recipe from a coworker and had been making it once a week for the past month. They ate at the kitchen table while watching the news on a small TV perched on the counter. The news was the usual: weather, traffic, a story about the town council debating a new zoning ordinance. They talked about their days. Angela mentioned that her boss had been in a mood all afternoon because a patient had complained about a billing issue. Robert told her about the driver shortage and how he'd probably have to work late the next day to make up for it. Normal conversation, the kind of mundane exchanges that fill a life together. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Angela put on a show she'd been following, a drama about a family running a restaurant. Robert sat next to her on the couch, scrolling through his phone, half watching. Around 9 p.m., Angela shifted on the couch. She put her hand to her chest. Robert looked over. "You okay?" "Yeah, just feel a little off." "Off how?" "Tired, a little lightheaded. It's fine." Robert asked if she wanted to lie down. She said no. She'd felt this way before. It usually passed. She got up and went to the bathroom, came back with her pill bottle, took her medication with a glass of water, sat back on the couch. Robert asked if she was sure she was okay. She smiled and said, "I'm fine, just one of those days." By 10 p.m., Angela said she was going to bed. She kissed Robert on the forehead and walked down the hall to the bedroom. Robert stayed up another hour, watching something on his laptop, a documentary about trucking history that he'd started a few days earlier. He wasn't really paying attention, just letting it play in the background while he checked emails. When he finally came to bed around 11:15, Angela was asleep, lying on her side facing the wall, breathing normally. The bedside lamp was off. Robert got into bed quietly, trying not to wake her. He set his phone on the nightstand, plugged it in to charge, and closed his eyes. Nothing seemed wrong. Robert woke up at 2:07 a.m. He doesn't remember what woke him, just a feeling. The kind of instinct that pulls you out of sleep for no reason you can name. Sometimes your body knows something is wrong before your mind catches up. He turned over. Angela was lying on her back now. Her arms were at her sides. Her mouth was slightly open. He said her name, softly at first. "Angela." No response. He said it again, louder. "Angela." Nothing. He reached over and touched her shoulder. Her skin was warm. That should have been comforting, but it wasn't. He shook her gently, then harder. She didn't move. That's when he noticed her chest wasn't rising. Panic hit him like cold water. He scrambled to sit up, fully awake now. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. He tried to check for a pulse, pressed his fingers to her neck the way he'd seen in movies. But his hands were shaking so hard he couldn't tell if he felt anything or not. Her skin was warm. That meant something, didn't it? Or did it? He didn't know. He'd never been trained in first aid, never taken a CPR class, never been in a situation like this. He grabbed his phone from the nightstand. His fingers fumbled the unlock code twice before getting it right. He dialed 911. His mind was racing. What happened? She was fine when he went to bed. She was breathing. She was asleep. How did this happen? The operator answered on the second ring. 911, what's your emergency? Robert's voice came out in a rush. My wife, she's not breathing. I don't know what's wrong. Okay, sir, I need you to stay calm. What's your address? He gave it, stumbling over the street name, even though he'd lived there for 3 years. His brain couldn't process simple information. The address he'd written on 100 forms, said out loud dozens of times, suddenly felt unfamiliar. Is she conscious? No, she's not moving. I can't tell if she's breathing. Okay, I'm sending help right now. They're on their way. Are you with her? Yes, I'm in the bedroom. Is she on her back? Yes. Okay, I need you to start chest compressions. Can you do that? I don't know how. I'll walk you through it. Place your hands in the center of her chest, one on top of the other. Push down hard and fast, about 2 inches deep. Can you do that? Robert positioned himself next to Angela. He placed his hands where he thought the center of her chest was. He wasn't sure. Was he too high? Too low? He pushed. It felt wrong, like he was hurting her. But she wasn't breathing, so what else could he do? How many times, he asked. 30 compressions, then 2 breaths. Keep going until help arrives. He started counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. He lost track around 15. Started over. His arms were already burning. He wasn't strong, wasn't athletic, just a guy who sat at a desk most of the day, but he kept going. Is she responding? The operator asked after a minute. I don't know. I can't tell. Please just hurry. They're coming, sir. You're doing great. Keep going. He wasn't doing great. He was falling apart. His mind was spinning. What happened? She was fine. They'd watched TV. She'd gone to bed early because she was tired. That's it. Just tired. How did this turn into this? The operator kept him on the line, asked questions between compressions, tried to keep him focused. Does she have any medical conditions? Her heart, she has a heart thing. Valve something? Is she on medication? Yes, I don't know the name. It's for her heart. It's in the bathroom. Okay, that's okay. Keep doing compressions. You're doing everything right. But he didn't feel like he was doing anything right. He heard sirens in the distance, faint at first, then closer, then loud enough to shake the windows. They're here, he said. Okay, go let them in. He dropped the phone on the bed and ran to the front door. 2 paramedics entered first, a man and a woman, both in their 30s. They carried bags and equipment. Professional, calm. They'd done this 1,000 times. Robert stepped back, pointing toward the bedroom. His voice was shaking so hard he could barely get the words out. She's in there. She's not breathing. I tried CPR, but I don't know if I did it right. They moved past him without a word. Efficient, focused. Robert stood in the hallway, frozen, useless. He could hear them in the bedroom. Low voices, equipment being unpacked, the sound of something electronic beeping. A police officer arrived a few minutes later. Standard procedure for medical emergencies in the county. The officer was young, maybe late 20s. He asked Robert to step outside. What happened tonight, sir? I don't know. I woke up and she wasn't breathing. Had she been sick? She has a heart condition. She takes medication for it. Did you two have an argument tonight? The question caught Robert off guard. What? No, we were fine. We watched TV and she went to bed. The officer wrote something down in a small notebook. Robert's mind was still in the bedroom, with Angela, with the paramedics working on her. Was she okay? Were they able to get her breathing again? One of the paramedics came to the door. His face said everything before he spoke. Flat, professional, practiced. I'm sorry. We did everything we could. She's gone. Robert's knees buckled. The officer caught him before he hit the ground. Angela was 34 years old. She'd been alive 12 hours ago, laughing at something on TV. Now she was gone. By sunrise, his wife was gone. Neighbors started appearing on their lawns, watching from a distance. The flashing lights had woken them up. Now they stood in bathrobes and slippers, whispering to each other. Robert sat on the front steps of his house, staring at nothing. The paramedics had left. The police were still inside, walking through the house, taking notes. Someone draped a blanket over Robert's shoulders. He didn't remember who. He looked like what he was, a man in shock, a husband who just lost his wife and didn't understand how or why. The neighbors saw a grieving man, but somewhere inside that house and inside that 911 recording, detectives believed they heard something else. A killer. By 7 a.m., the scene had shifted from medical emergency to potential crime scene. A detective arrived. His name was Lieutenant Crane, 22 years on the force, homicide unit. He walked through the house slowly, taking in details. The bedroom looked ordinary. Unmade bed. Robert's phone still on the nightstand. Angela's medication bottle on the dresser. Crane asked Robert to walk him through the night. Robert repeated everything. The dinner, the TV. Angela going to bed early, waking up at 2:07 a.m. Crane listened, asked follow-up questions. You said she went to bed around 10 o'clock. You came to bed at 11:15. Did you check on her when you came in? She was asleep. And you didn't notice anything unusual? No, she was fine. Crane wrote that down, Later, Crane would testify that Robert's timeline had inconsistencies. But in the moment, Robert didn't realize he was already being evaluated. Robert was asked to come to the station later that day to give a formal statement. He went willingly. Why wouldn't he? His wife had just died. If they needed information to understand what happened, he wanted to help. The interview started gently. "We're sorry for your loss, Robert. We just need to get all the details straight so we can close this out properly." He answered every question. How long they'd been married, her medical history, whether they'd argued recently. "No, we didn't fight. We barely even disagreed." "What about finances? Any stress there?" "We were fine. I mean, we weren't rich, but we paid our bills." "Life insurance?" The question felt strange. "Yeah, we both have policies through our jobs." "Why?" "Just routine." "How much?" "I don't know. Maybe 50,000. I'd have to check." Crane made a note. The interview lasted 2 hours. By the end, Robert was exhausted, emotionally hollowed out. "Can I go now?" "Of course, we'll be in touch if we need anything else." Robert left. He didn't know that the moment he walked out, Crane turned to his partner and said, "He's hiding something." 3 days after Angela's death, the medical examiner released a preliminary finding. Cause of death undetermined. Possible cardiac event. No signs of trauma. Toxicology pending. Crane wasn't satisfied. He pulled the 911 recording, listened to it a dozen times, played it for other detectives. Listen to this part. He says, "I don't know what happened." Not "I don't know what's wrong" or "help her." He says, "What happened?" Like something already happened. Past tense. Another detective chimed in. And here, when the operator asks if she's breathing, there's a pause, like he's thinking about his answer. Exactly, a truly panicked person wouldn't pause, they'd just answer. They dissected every word, every breath, every hesitation. Robert had told the operator Angela had a heart condition, but he'd stumbled over the name of her medication. If he really cared about her health, wouldn't he know the exact medication she was on? To Crane, the call wasn't evidence of panic. It was evidence of performance. A man trying to sound like a grieving husband while covering up what he'd done. The medical examiner's full report came back 6 weeks later. Cause of death, acute myocardial infarction, heart attack. Contributing factors, mitral valve prolapse, beta blocker medication. Manner of death, natural. No evidence of foul play, no bruising, no signs of struggle, no poisons or overdose. Crane read the report. Then he called the medical examiner. "You're telling me a healthy 34-year-old woman just had a heart attack in her sleep?" She wasn't entirely healthy. She had a pre-existing condition. But couldn't someone have caused it? Stress? Smothering? There's no evidence of smothering, and stress doesn't typically cause sudden cardiac arrest in someone her age unless there's an underlying vulnerability, which she had. Crane pressed. "But it's possible." "Anything's possible, but probable? No." Crane thanked him and hung up. Then he filed the report and moved forward anyway, because to Crane, the medical examiner hadn't ruled out homicide definitively, and that was enough. 2 months after Angela's death, Robert was asked to come back to the station. This time, the tone was different. "Robert, we've been reviewing everything, and there are some things that don't add up." "Like what?" "Like the fact that you were the last person to see Angela alive." "I was her husband. Of course I was." "And you stand to benefit financially from her death." Robert's stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" "The life insurance policy, $50,000. "That's not. We had those policies for years. That's normal." "Is it? Or did you need that money?" "I didn't need anything. We were fine." The questions kept coming, faster now, overlapping. "Why did you wait so long to call 911? "I didn't. I called as soon as I realized." "You said you woke up at 2:07. The call came in at 2:12. That's 5 minutes." "I was trying to wake her up. I didn't know what was happening." "Or you were making sure she was dead before you called." Robert's voice cracked. "I loved her. I would never hurt her." "Then why does your story keep changing?" "It doesn't. I've told you the same thing every time. But it wasn't the same, not exactly. Under stress, small details shifted. The time he went to bed. Whether Angela had mentioned feeling lightheaded once or twice. Whether he'd checked her pulse before calling or after. Normal memory under trauma. But to detectives, it was evidence of deception. They didn't have a confession, but they didn't need one. They had something more powerful, a narrative. 4 months after Angela's death, Robert was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. The theory, he'd smothered her with a pillow, staged the scene, called 911 to create the appearance of trying to save her. Motive, life insurance money. Evidence, the 911 call, the inconsistencies in his statements, and the fact that he was the only person in the house. No physical evidence, no witnesses, no forensics. Just a story. And in their story, the hysterical husband who called 911 was a man carefully staging a crime scene. The trial began 14 months after Angela's death. Robert was charged with second-degree murder. If convicted, he faced 15 years to life in prison. His family sat in the gallery every day. His mother, his 2 brothers, Angela's sister, they all believed him. But belief doesn't matter in a courtroom. Proof matters. And the prosecution claimed they had it. The assistant district attorney, a woman named Fielding, opened with the 911 call. She played it in full. The courtroom listened in silence. Robert's voice, shaking, desperate, pleading, filled the room. When it ended, Fielding stood. You just heard the defendant claim he didn't know what happened to his wife. But ladies and gentlemen, he knew exactly what happened. Because he did it. She walked the jury through her theory. Robert and Angela had been struggling financially. The life insurance policy was worth $50,000. Not a fortune, but enough. On the night of March the 22nd, Robert waited until Angela was asleep. He smothered her with a pillow. When he was certain she was dead, he staged a panic. He called 911. He performed CPR badly because he didn't actually want to save her. The motive, money, the evidence, his own words. Fielding replayed specific lines from the 911 call. Listen to this. The operator asks, "Is she breathing?" He says, "I don't think so." Not no, not she's not breathing. He says, "I don't think so." Why the uncertainty? Because he's pretending not to know what he already knows. She played another section. Here, the operator asks him to do compressions. Listen to his tone. He's not frantic. He's controlled, methodical. Why? Because this is a performance. She brought in an expert, a retired FBI agent who specialized in linguistic analysis of emergency calls. The expert testified that Robert's language patterns indicated detachment and rehearsed distress. In genuine panic, people speak in fragments. They interrupt themselves. They use present tense, active language. Robert's speech is too structured, too coherent. It suggests someone who's controlling their reaction rather than experiencing it. The jury listened. Some took notes. Fielding also emphasized the timeline. Robert says he woke up at 2:07 a.m. The 911 call came in at 2:12. That's 5 minutes. What was he doing for 5 minutes while his wife wasn't breathing? If you truly love someone, if you truly believed they were dying, would you wait 5 minutes to call for help? She didn't wait for an answer. Or would you wait long enough to make sure they were already dead? Robert's public defender, an older attorney named Gaines, did his best. He called Angela's cardiologist to testify about her heart condition. The doctor explained mitral valve prolapse, the risks, the likelihood of sudden cardiac events in patients with her condition. Is it medically possible for someone with Angela's condition to die suddenly in her sleep without any external cause? Yes, it's uncommon, but possible. And would there be any physical evidence of that kind of death? Not necessarily. A cardiac event can occur without visible trauma. Gaines also brought in friends and family who testified about Robert and Angela's relationship. Angela's co-worker, they were sweet together. I never saw any tension. Robert's brother, he loved her. He was devastated when she died. But Fielding cross-examined ruthlessly. You said they seemed happy, but you didn't live with them, did you? No. So you don't actually know what happened behind closed doors? No, but thank you. No further questions. The medical examiner was called by the defense to reiterate that the manner of death was ruled natural. But on cross-examination, Fielding got what she needed. Dr. Chen, you ruled this a natural death, but you can't say with 100% certainty that it wasn't caused by smothering, can you? Smothering doesn't always leave physical evidence. But in this case, yes or no, doctor? Can you rule it out with absolute certainty? A pause. No, I cannot rule it out with absolute certainty. Thank you. The jury heard reasonable doubt about the cause of death, but they also heard the 911 call over and over, and in a case with no physical evidence, the emotional weight of that recording became everything. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Robert sat in the courtroom, staring at his hands. His mother sat behind him, praying quietly. On the 3rd day, the jury sent a note. They'd reached a verdict. Everyone filed back in. The judge asked the foreperson to stand. In the matter of the state versus Robert Callahan on the charge of second-degree murder, how do you find? We find the defendant guilty. Robert's mother gasped. His brothers dropped their heads. Robert sat perfectly still. He didn't cry, didn't speak. The call he made in desperation to save his wife's life had just helped send him to prison for decades. But the jury still hadn't heard the one thing that could have changed everything: the truth about how she really died. 3 years into Robert's sentence, a new attorney took on his case pro bono. Her name was Dr. Ellison, not a lawyer, a forensic pathologist. She'd heard about the case through a wrongful conviction advocacy group and agreed to review the medical evidence. What she found changed everything. Angela's toxicology report, filed but never thoroughly examined during trial, showed elevated levels of her beta-blocker medication in her system. Not enough to be an overdose, but enough to suggest she'd been taking it regularly and possibly at a higher dose than prescribed. Dr. Ellison cross-referenced Angela's medical records. 6 months before her death, Angela had complained to her cardiologist about increased palpitations. The doctor had adjusted her medication dosage, but there was no record of Angela filling the new prescription. Dr. Ellison dug deeper. She found Angela's pharmacy records. Angela had continued filling her old prescription, the lower dosage, but had been taking it more frequently than prescribed. The result: cumulative effect. Her body was getting more of the drug than it should, but not in a single dangerous dose. Dr. Ellison consulted with cardiologists. They confirmed, in a patient with mitral valve prolapse, irregular use of beta blockers combined with stress and lack of sleep could trigger a fatal arrhythmia. Angela's death wasn't just possible, it was medically probable, and it had nothing to do with Robert. Dr. Ellison's findings weren't new information. The toxicology report had been in the case file from the beginning. Angela's medical records were available. The pharmacy records were subpoenaed during the investigation. But nobody connected the dots. The prosecution focused on the 911 call. The defense focused on the medical examiner's ruling of natural causes. Nobody asked the right questions about Angela's medication. During trial, Gaines had tried to introduce Angela's medical history, but Fielding objected on relevance grounds. The judge allowed some testimony but limited it. The pharmacy records were never introduced. The adjusted dosage issue was never explored, and the jury never heard that Angela's death had a clear, evidence-based medical explanation. Dr. Ellison filed a motion for a new trial based on newly discovered evidence. The motion argued that the medical explanation for Angela's death, supported by toxicology and pharmacy records, would have created reasonable doubt if presented to the jury. The prosecution fought back. They argued that the evidence wasn't new. It was available at trial. Robert's defense team simply failed to use it effectively. The motion was denied. Dr. Ellison appealed. 2 more years passed. Robert remained in prison. His mother developed dementia. She stopped recognizing him during visits. His younger brother got married. Robert wasn't there. Angela's sister wrote him a letter. She said she believed him now. She said she was sorry, but sorry doesn't open cell doors. Finally, 4 years after Dr. Ellison took the case, the state appellate court agreed to hear oral arguments. Dr. Ellison stood before 3 judges and laid out the medical evidence. Angela Callahan died of a cardiac arrhythmia, caused by a combination of her pre-existing condition and improper medication management. This was not a homicide. This was a tragedy. And Robert Callahan has spent 5 years in prison for a crime that never occurred. One of the judges asked the prosecution to respond. The Assistant Attorney General stood. "Your Honor, the conviction was based on more than just medical evidence. It was based on the defendant's behavior, his statements, and the circumstances of the case. But if the medical evidence conclusively shows natural causes, does the rest matter?" A pause. "We believe the jury was within their rights to weigh the evidence as they saw fit." The judge pressed further. "Even if that evidence was incomplete?" No answer. 3 months later, the appellate court issued a ruling. The trial court erred in limiting the defense's ability to present medical evidence. In light of the comprehensive analysis provided by Dr. Ellison, we find that the conviction cannot stand. The defendant's conviction is hereby vacated. The state may retry the case or dismiss the charges. The prosecution chose not to retry. There was no case. There never had been. 6 years after Angela's death, Robert walked out of prison. His mother didn't recognize him. His brothers were there, older now, grayer. The cameras were there too. Reporters asked how he felt. Robert didn't answer. He just walked to his brother's car and left. Robert spent 6 years in prison. He missed his mother's decline into dementia. The disease crept in during his second year inside. By year 4, she didn't always remember who he was. During visits, she'd look at him through the glass with confused eyes. "Who are you?" "It's me, Mom. It's Robert." She'd nod, but there was nothing behind her eyes. She died 8 months after his release. Robert sat by her bed holding her hand. She didn't recognize him, didn't know her son was finally free. He missed his younger brother's wedding. Thomas had wanted Robert to be his best man. They'd made that promise as teenagers. Thomas stood at the altar with a friend from work instead. He missed his nephew's birth. Thomas's son, born during Robert's 5th year. Robert didn't meet the boy until he was 2 years old. He missed his father's 75th birthday, the big party the family had planned. He lost his job, his house, his savings. When he got out of prison, he was 43 years old with nothing. Robert applied for dozens of jobs. The interviews always ended the same way. "Can you explain this gap in your employment?" "I was wrongfully convicted. The conviction was overturned." "I see." He never got those jobs. He ended up working night shifts at a warehouse. Loading trucks, minimum wage. He moved into a small apartment, 1 bedroom, thin walls. Some people in town still thought he'd gotten away with murder. A woman at the grocery store recognized him once. She pulled her children close and walked away. Robert learned to keep his head down, to live small. Angela's story was erased by the false narrative. She became a character in a courtroom drama, the murdered wife, the victim who couldn't speak. But she wasn't murdered. She was a woman with a heart condition who died too young, who loved her job, who remembered birthdays, who made chicken stir-fry on weeknights. She deserved to be remembered as a person, not a plot point. 2 years after his release, a journalist asked Robert, "Would you call 911 again in an emergency?" Robert sat with the question for a long time. Finally, he said, "I don't know. I honestly don't know." "What do you mean? What if they don't believe me? What if calling for help destroys my life again?" He lives with that fear now. The fear that asking for help can destroy your life. We tell people, in an emergency, call 911. But this case shows what can happen when a system decides your fear is evidence of guilt. Robert's panic was turned into a performance. His desperation was reframed as deception. And a phone call meant to save a life became the centerpiece of a case that stole 6 years of his. How many other calls, made in panic, are sitting in evidence rooms right now, ready to be turned into stories about killers instead of victims? This isn't an isolated case. Across the country, wrongful convictions have been built on 911 calls, on grief reactions, on demeanor that didn't match what investigators expected. Because we built a system that confuses human emotion with criminal intent. Robert Callahan made one phone call at 2:12 a.m. He thought he was calling for help. He was calling for help, but the system decided otherwise. If you want to understand how innocent people get turned into villains by the systems meant to protect them, there are more true stories on this channel. You've just watched one call that changed a man's life forever. In the next video, you'll hear how a mother's false confession cost her 3 decades of freedom. Subscribe to True Stories that Change Lives.